morning. I'm here with Dr. Elmer this morning. We are going to talk about babies and their milestones. I want to tell Dr. Elmer why I want to discuss babies today. We had come here to bring our daughter in for an appointment, and there was a video that Dr. Elmer had showed us with a girl that had cerebral palsy. And she was about 14, I'm going to say in this video, about the time when this doctor had finally met her. But the very first thing the doctor did with the little girl, who was about 14, was to have her crawl on the floor by using, I think I'm saying it right, bilateral motions. And this is why it's so crucial for your child to crawl. So we're going to go into a little bit about crawling, walking. And then my daughter posed a question to me too that I wanted to ask you about too later on, about burping and why that is so important. So, but first, before we start off, I want to introduce Dr. Elmer, which I have done many times, but he is a functional neurologist. So Dr. Elmer, tell people what a functional neurologist is.
Well, first of all, most of the functional neurologists are chiropractors
Okay.
who have specialized into the realm of neurology and particularly neuroscience. In order to take your board to become a chiropractic neurologist, you have to basically study all the same things that a medical doctor that becomes a neurologist has to study. Same books, same test almost, except for, we don't do near as much with pharmaceuticals and that. But the same kind of curriculum, but we spend in functional neurology a lot more time in the realm of what does neuroscience teach us about the nervous system? Because the medical community is about 30 to 40 years behind the research. And so there's so much to be learned on how it works. And then there are very creative ways to stimulate the system to bring it back to normal. If you go to a medical neurologist and you had a stroke, you had what's called an ablative lesion. And you can see it, oftentimes you can see it on a CAT scan or an MRI. It's actual damage to tissue. That's what we mean when we say ablative. But there are many people who have what we call soft lesions, which means you can't see it on a CAT scan or an MRI. It's a physiological aberration. It's not doing its job the way it was built to. And because of it, it's creating all kinds of havoc throughout the rest of the nervous system and throughout your body. Because if you were to look at all the different things that can go wrong in all the different parts of your body, different organs and systems and that, it's nothing compared to what goes wrong in the brain, what goes wrong in the spinal cord and the brainstem. And so in functional neurology, we take an educated approach. When I say educated, it's like we're the GPS of the nervous system, right?
Yeah.
We know where things are. We know what's next to what. We know how it functions. We know how to stimulate it. If you know how to stimulate it, you know how to push it. And so we use what's called an afferent-based approach. It means sensory. All my inputs are coming in through the sensory system. Imagine if a person was like a computer and I'm playing with the keyboard, which is their sensory system, and I'm watching the motor output on the monitor. That's their monitor. And I'm watching the effects, but it's telling me more about the brain and spinal cord and brainstem than it is about the motor system. Because that's what I want to figure out. Where is that problem? We call it the longitudinal level of the lesion. Is it in the brain? Is it in the basal ganglia? Is it in the brainstem? Is it in the spinal cord? Is it in the nerves? And is it in the sensory side? Is it in the motor side? So that I know how can I input. And then I try, let's say I've got 8 different ways to input into that system. I'm going to try all 8.
Yeah.
And see which one works the best. Because I don't know. Everybody is where we talked about that last night in the workshop, about functional neurology and how it's so different because medicine is going to eventually be automated. I mean, they're already trying to do that now on the internet, and robots are going to do it because there is no, it's always one size fits all. If you have these symptoms, we're going to give you this pill. And so we might as well have a robot do it, which is really sad for the medical doctors, because I know some brilliant medical doctors who think with medicine. They're my counterparts.
Yeah.
They'll say, no, I would normally give you this, but I think you need this. And then they're monitoring, and they're watching for changes. Hey, that's great. That's really cool medicine. They're thinking with medicine. Well, on my side, I'll never be obsolete because I'm always watching for a plethora of possible changes and sensitivities. And I'm seeing breath changes. I'm seeing twitches in little tiny eye twitch movements. I'm seeing aberrations in eye movements. Well, you can get that on a camera. We already do that, right? Sarcoidometry and nystagography, and I mean all these different things. But then, what do you do with it? Because one thing you do with it may make it worse.
Yeah.
And so it's not as simple as, you know, the algorithms would say. Okay, the bell curve says that it should be this, but none of my patients are bell curves, because when they come in, what they have when they come in isn't what they have tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're a little different, and they're a little different the next visit, and they're a little different the next visit. That's what makes it so fun for me. But I can see how there are many who would hate it, because they want to come in, crack, 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 you're out, crack, 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 you're out, crack, 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 you're out, and everybody's the same. I say, for me, it's every patient is different every day. And if I were to describe what my job is, it's an adventure.
It is an adventure.
Every single day.
So like a functional neurologist looks at the overall function of the brain. So that's interesting. You know, instant gratification can have bad long-term effects.
Oh, yeah.
So I just wrote that quote down not too long ago, as a matter of fact, because I was thinking about that with the millennials. Everybody talks about the millennials. So Dr. Elmer, tell us about crawling and why is it so important? I hear moms on the other side, they want their kid to walk, 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 walk. Yeah. And then my daughter was going this with my granddaughter, and I said, Holly, she'll walk at her own time. Mm-hmm. Just let her be her. And I noticed she was on her tippy toes a lot. So I was at a class with you, and I said, Dr. Elmer, because we always put those hard-soled shoes on our children. She don't do that so much anymore. But as soon as she put those hard-soled shoes on there, she was going all around. Yeah. So tell people about why is it so important for babies to crawl first. That's the very first milestone.
Yeah, it's so important. When you imagine you know, a baby being born and it comes out of the womb, you tend to think that's a little adult brain. It is not. It's completely uncharted territory. It's burgeoning territory. It doesn't even have dirt pathways, right? You've got to make the brain. In fact, you've got to finish up making the spinal cord and the brainstem. In neuroscience, Paul MacLean talks about it in terms of the spinal cord and the brainstem being like a car. He calls it the neurochassis. And that car has everything it needs to work. And when you hear about somebody, well, they're brain dead, that means the driver's dead. The car is fine. But if the driver's not coming back, then eventually the car will degrade and die. So they are dead. But in terms of building that spinal cord, there was some building that was taking place in the womb, but it was highly limited because the forces on it were limited to touch, swaddling type touch on its body, and limited to the movements of the mom. There was little bits of vibration that were coming through, but it wasn't at the level you come out and all of a sudden, whoa, gravity. Yeah, no kidding. Whoa, these loud sounds. And my dad's really loud, especially if he's in my house, right? The lights are bright and everything is so radical compared to when in the womb. And so all of these factors are stimulating the activity of those nerves. And that's why they sleep so much, because they're so tired.
They had a long journey.
They had a long journey, and they've got a system that's not used to that at all. We were talking last night about we're going to be doing some work with comas and coma patients. And when you're working with coma patients and you're bringing them into consciousness, if you can get them into consciousness, but they tell you, I'm tired, you tell them, go back to sleep, because there's such an inertia. Like, let's say they've been in coma for 2 years, and you bring them out into consciousness. That was so much inertia and getting that thing to go. And when you get it going, you do not want to kill those cells. You want to get them used to, okay, you come out, well, hey, I'll be back tomorrow, you know?
Yeah.
And I've watched the patterns, and I'm going to be here at this time, and I'm going to be stimulating the system and see if I can bring you out again. And then pretty soon they're able to stay longer and longer. Well, imagine here's a child that's never, ever been conscious outside of the womb.
Yeah.
And now all of these over inundations of stimuli are starting the development of each of the sensory systems, all the wiring, that gets you there, all that we call it integrators. Imagine if we were to boil down every single sensory system into a simple, you got a microphone here. We have a microphone we're talking into. A microphone, and the microphone has a wire. It's changing the sound waves into an electrical signal. It goes down the wire, and then it goes to an amplifier. In neurology, we'd call that an integrator. It's taking information. It may be taking it from many other sources too, bringing it all together and making some decisions. And then it goes from there into another wire, from the amplifier back to the wire, back to the speaker. And that you hear with the speaker. Well, in the case of vision, it's the rods and cones that are bringing the information in. The wiring is bringing it back into the brainstem, into the supracolliculus, and which is where the integrator is. And then from there, the wires are going back into the occipital lobe, which is the speaker, which is what we see with the occipital lobe. Well, imagine that all of that stuff has to be built.
Yeah.
It's never functioned before, and so it has to get used to it. And the kid, oh, look, she's looking at me. No, she's looking at something, right? And she especially knows that's loud, right? Dad is loud, and he smiles a lot. I think that's a smile. But anyway, he's just so happy to see me. So, but in everything that happens, everything that takes place, they've got to go through those and let it happen.
Yeah, let it happen.
Let it happen. When we get to crawling, and this is why I'd say every mom, get off the internet, right? I'm going to put you on a high-fact diet, right? Don't look at the charts that say where they should be. Help them, stimulate them, get them involved, hold them up. The first real thing they get is when you take the baby and put it against you, right? And as you put it against you, then now they're all of a sudden feeling gravity, but they're supported by you.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, after a while, you're putting them on the hip, and they're learning to operate their vestibular nuclei to give the tone in the muscles in their body, particularly in their spine, to be able to be rigid against gravity naturally, to have that natural tone all the time. And as they're doing that, then all of a sudden you'll notice mom leans, and when she leans, the baby leans with them. Oh, okay, that's one phase. Then when the baby leans, when mom leans, the baby leans away in concert. That's pretty cool, because now the baby's responding to what mom's doing and maintaining the balance within the entire system, which she's part of the system. And then anyway, but then when we put them on the floor, then they're looking up. Where's mom? That's when they're really starting to develop. They did a little bit when they were looking forward, but when they started to look up for mom, that's when they're really developing the curve in their neck, the muscles that support that, the reflexes that drive it and make it work, and they're starting, and all of this stuff takes place in the spinal cord and brainstem. We're building the car.
Yeah.
The primitive reflexes are about building the car. It also has a back loop into the brain, and it's starting to do that too. But the main desire is to build that car fully. The better that car is, the better the driver can drive it.
That makes perfect sense.
If you don't, let's say you neglect part of the car, the suspension system, then you have a Yugo suspension system on a Ferrari.
Right.
And so, oh yeah, my kid's walking at
9 months.
10 months, 9 months. Oh, hey, don't be happy about that.
No, because eventually over time, I got to bring up something, because my son, we have a mutual friend. My son's teacher is a mutual friend of mine. And I noticed that Eli, sometimes things aren't firing right in his brain. He's 11. And I thought about this after we got to talking, you and I, and all the classes, and just thinking about why maybe there's a misfire. I believe when Eli was really little, his feet were like this from inside my belly. So we had to put casts on his legs. Right when we put casts on his legs is right when he started to crawl.
Right.
So I'm wondering and they do crawl over when they have them on, but I do wonder if that kind of might have hampered something during that.
Definitely does. And the crawling phases are the baby starts to crawl like a lizard, or I like to say the army man going under the barbed wire. And that is building the lateral flexion system. And we want that to happen. That's why we use the ab circle, and we recommend that moms there's now a smaller version, a pediatric version, and that we have one here, and my kids have them, at their house for my grandkids. But it allows us to get that lateral flexion system developed. And say, well, why is that important? Because when you build it, you have it. If you don't build it, if you've got a dirt bike path, wow, you don't have much. Like I say, you got a Yugo suspension on a Ferrari. Well, let's take and build it into a 6-lane highway, because that is the foundation of the cross crawl system. And the cross crawl system is the foundation of all the systems, and particularly also the autonomics of all blood flow, heart rate, breathing function. All the autonomics are wired into that cross crawl system. And I can't tell you how many conditions I deal with where that is the major problem. And I can play games with the autonomic nervous system, get it to function better for a while. I can do the other systems, but I have to weave it back into that cross crawl system, which becomes the diadochokinesia, where I'm alternating my shoulders and hips when I walk. And that if I'm going to expect to have the autonomic nervous system work appropriately without my help, that's what I want. I don't want to see them forever. I want to get it to function the way it was supposed to, and let them move on, and I'll take care of their friends who are falling apart.
Yeah.
But the cross crawl system, if you don't have a 6-lane highway, learning that is that much harder, and it will never be quite as good. And so all the systems are degraded. So we say, hey, 4 months of lateral crawling, I don't care who they are. They're 65 years old. Put them on the ab circle. Now, most of those can't do it because their knees are shot by that point. But doing that lateral crawl system for somebody who's 25, I got plenty of 25-year-olds that come in here and they say, oh, I feel like an old man. I say, well, you look like an old man. I say, I'm twice your age, and I don't look like you. You look like my dad.
Yeah.
He's 80.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because they never built that system in the first place. And they say, well, but they're adults. Say, yeah, they're an adult brain with a baby nervous system. Wow. So we got to go back and build it. Say, well, how do you do that? You get behind them, make it a game. Grab their legs. They're pulling. So give them a little resistance and then let them go. Give them a little resistance, let them go. And make for little older kids, make an obstacle course for them to crawl through. Put some knee pads on them, right? When you do the ab circle, they get up in the morning, they do the ab circle for 5 minutes. Then when they get home from school, do the ab circle. Wake their brain up again so that they can do their homework.
Yeah.
And then get them cross crawling. I have them go through 9 months of cross crawl.
Okay.
I want 6-lane highway on that system too.
Okay.
And when you're doing all of that, you're demanding activity. You're demanding that it work in concert, but you're wiring the autonomics of supplying it, right? If you're crawling, you're demanding those muscles to actually work and function, but you're also demanding that you supply the fuel in real time. You can't think about that. That's got to be automated, and it's got to be wired into the process. Literally, you got a wire coming down here to move certain muscles and to inhibit others. And you've got a lateral chute that's going into the middle of the spinal cord that's giving you the autonomics of that system, so that you're supplying the blood flow that they're going to need while they're doing it. So it happens all together, but it takes time. Well, it shouldn't take that long. Yeah, right.
Yeah, well,
it takes what it takes.
Yeah, it takes what it takes.
Yeah.
It's amazing because babies, they are in their belly, then they lift up, and then they rock, and then they crawl. So this is the way they were made to be. And then also, I know Dr. Elmer's mentioned before about holding babies on your hip, and explain about why is it important? How I see some people hold it where the baby's legs are straight, but my kids always wrapped around.
Yeah. They wrap around. They're getting used to grabbing on things and utilizing different parts of the nervous system. They're used to engaging their center. We call it the core, right? Well, that name was stolen by the personal trainers, right? Their core is the trunk. The center core of an apple is the seeds, right?
Right.
Well, the center core of us is the spine. And so the midline, in neurology, we call it the midline. The midline structures have to fire first. Then the shoulders can fire, shoulders and hips can fire. Then the knees and elbows can fire. And then the hands and the feet, wrist, hands, and feet. And that they have to operate in that order. If they don't do it at all. If your spine doesn't shunt, then the rest of them don't shunt to stabilize. And when they don't do that, you get problems musculoskeletal wise. That's where older athletes get in trouble. They go out and play again. It's not their muscles. It's this, when I say that, the movers, it's the stabilizers that aren't doing their job anymore. And that's where they get hurt. Well, imagine that all of that is a part of the movement system that causes us to be able to think.
Mm-hmm.
That causes us to be able to make reason, that causes us to have personality, that causes us to be able to interact socially, to read faces, and to act in a way or respond in a way that's in context. But if all of those functions are not in place, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I don't have the capacity. And to think that they should or to demand that they should is cruel.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot, especially in schools. Well, you should do that. Okay, you definitely are a problem. Let's give you drugs. We're going to give you Ritalin or Adderall. So now we're going to drug them because they're unacceptable.
Yeah.
Say, no, you got to build that system. If you don't build that system, you don't build that system.
Yeah.
And it just keeps going. Who are those kids later? They're the kids who couldn't stay in school. They couldn't go to college. They're the kids who are doing a little bit more. When I say menial, I mean less educated type of work, and they're incredibly high stressed. They have severe anxiety problems because it turns from the I've got so much energy and I'm expressing it outward to now it's being dissipated inside my body. And so those 25, 35, 45-year-olds that didn't fix that problem are now the future heart attack victims.
You know, that's such a good thing to talk about is, you know, I used to be a school teacher and I would have a few parents that would come to me and I never diagnosed, but I always told them, I believe what I've seen when the kids, so I had 35 fourth graders in my room and we used to have a snack. And if they ate those Takis or those hot Cheetos, because they got red dye, whatever, they were crazy.
Nuts.
And I wonder, and so I told them, I said, we can't have this in the classroom anymore. So before people go to the Adderalls and go to the Ritalins, maybe those go back to diet. I think a lot of it can go back to diet many times.
Well, diet is a problem for these kids because they got to have the three things that the cell needs are oxygen, number one. Number two, they've got to have carbs and sugars. They need those really more in the evening so that they can have them the next day. And they've got to have activation of those nerves. There's no substitute for activation. But in order to activate, they got to have protein.
Yeah, I know. I'm big at the protein.
They got to have, they do, whenever you fire a nerve, it goes through what's called immediate early gene response, which means cellular housekeeping. You're replacing whatever's gone bad. And if you don't fire it, you don't replace it. And eventually the cell starts to break down and die. And it goes through a process we call transneural degeneration, which is the opposite of neuroplasticity. Well, that whole process, we've got to have the protein in order to be able to do that. That's the base level nutrition advice, you know, that we give right off the bat. So if you've got a kid who's you know eating Cheetos, the hot Cheetos or whatever, and they melt down, there are two things whenever I see a meltdown, and that doesn't matter whether they're 11 months old or 95. When they melt down, two things happen. I got inflammation in the brain, means I didn't get enough protein.
Yeah.
You put those two things together, you got a meltdown. And it's something that they can't control. So they got inflammation in the brain, which is a firestorm, creates all kinds of havoc, brain fog, severe fatigue, severe anger issues, highly limbic, hormonal, because the limbic brain, the frontal limbic brain is the hypothalamus that gives out the hormonal systems, gives them their marching orders and that. But imagine you've got this meltdown happening because of no protein. So they come in to see me, they're melting down. The first thing I do is I get them some protein.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'm going to do what I always do is a cold caloric to jack down the hot brain. And oftentimes that hot brain is the left brain. And most of these kids, the left cortex is going to be so high, and the right cortex is going to be so low. No control over emotions, big gas pedal. The left side in neuroscience we call the gas pedal. And so we got those two things happening. So I do a right cold caloric, which drops down the cerebellum on this side and drops down the cortex on this side. And then I do a warm caloric on this side, jacking it up so that they get more refinement of control of their emotions. And they're a different person. In fact, I'll be holding them down. They're yelling at me. They're punching me in the throat. They're kicking me in the groin. They're threatening, I'm going to kill you. And then we do the 2 calorics, and you notice their pupils, which are huge, and all of a sudden they get really, really small, and all of a sudden they start breathing really slow and deep. And I always go, hey, how you doing, bud?
Yeah, welcome back.
That's them, right? The other thing is we call it the lizard. In neurology, we call it the lizard brain. And so we get them in that state, and then we can do whatever we want. I like my comment, to parents is never negotiate with a lizard, ever. Say, I'm going to be a drill instructor with the lizard, but as soon as they change, I change. I'm not mad because of what they said or whatever. No, that wasn't you, man. That was the lizard. And I don't believe the lizard anyway. So yeah, he's just lying. So as soon as I see him, hey, we can talk. Well, I didn't want to do that. What if we did it this way? Because I could modify it and make it a little bit different and in a way that sounds interesting to them. Yeah, and then we're doing it. I'll talk to them and I'll modify things for them easily for that. But in building that system, we have to be conscious that the right cortex drives the immune system, the neuroimmune system. The left drives the hormonal system. So when my right cortex is low, my immune system isn't functioning the way it should. It isn't being refined by a mature right cortex. And the system that governs and protects me, my skin, my blood-brain barrier, and my gut lining, that's a real popular one, the gut lining these days. Yeah. And what's funny is they don't realize, well, I got a leaky gut. Yeah, that means you have a leaky brain too. That means you have leaky skin too. Why? Because it's all one system, and it's governed by one system, right? That system is watching over it, and if one of the systems is down, they're all down. It's kind of like a computer room for security. I've got a buddy who used to monitor the temple up here, and he was there on site, and then later he wound up being hired up in Salt Lake to watch all the temples in North America. And he sat in a room that had all the screens of all the buildings across North America, and he'd sit there and watch it. And that one screen for Las Vegas was what he used to monitor on site. Well, if that room goes down, they all go down. They're all on their own. When that system goes down in the central nervous system, and particularly in the brain stem, when it goes down, leaky gut, leaky brain, leaky skin. So now anything I get in that could potentially cause inflammation that I could get across the blood-brain barrier is now going to create inflammation. All I have to do, it's going to be bad enough as it is. It's a horrible thing to have brain inflammation. I can tell you from experience from brain injuries that it is not fun. It is distressing. There's severe brain fog, severe fatigue, anxiousness, anxiety, depression, frustration, low frustration tolerance, sensitivities to light, sound, smells. You want to try? Want to sign up for that? No, that's what's happening to these little kids because they can't keep the crap out because their frontal lobe isn't working. So, but they did walk it 9 months. Yeah, I'm so happy about that. Well, yeah, but we're not developing the kid the way they're supposed to. They're developing very lopsided. So we got to go through and literally repair, or not repair, but develop that stuff. Yeah, develop it in the areas that need to be developed, not in the areas that they don't. Because when you develop the areas that they don't, you're actually creating a greater imbalance.
I was going to say, yeah. So if there are children out there, I'm going to say around the 6 to 11, 12-year-old that are suffering some of these things where they do have a low tolerance they get frustrated easy. What are some things moms can do at home to maybe help? Well, besides the protein.
Yeah,
I know
everybody's looking for either, the easy, quick answer. A quick answer is the good nutrition that is, like I say, oxygen, carbohydrates, and sugars, but the low glycemic, sugars, and then protein, so that activation. But the real answer is activation. We got to activate it. We got to get them moving. Too much of their lives are sitting around. Too much of their lives. I mean, look at school itself, sitting around. And the kid's moving. Why does he move? Because he knows he feels better when he moves. His brain starts to work better when he moves. But wait a minute, you're a disturbing element. Or was it scurvy elephant? It might have been. I like scurvy elephant better.
There you go.
But disturbing element. So let's get you drugged, so that you won't be
so active.
Right, so active, because not that it really disrupts the class, but it disrupts me, because I can, if I have this much movement, I'm okay. But if I have this much movement, we got teachers that can't handle that.
Yeah.
So, whoa, wait a minute. Have a few kids, then be a teacher. Then you go, hey, they're moving. I didn't even notice.
Exactly. Don't pay attention.
Yeah, big whoop. That happens at our house all day long, right?
Yeah. So video games, that's what makes me think of the video games. There's a lot going on with that.
I would be highly limiting video games, less than an hour a day, and I would be challenging them. Say, okay, you like to play this game? Play it upside down. Play it on its side. Play it. You've mastered this game now. No, you don't play it. We're not buying you a new video game. You're going to play it upside down now. Now you're going to play it on. You mastered that upside down. Now you're going to play it on its side. Now you're going to play it on the other side. You master all 4 of those, I'll buy you a new game.
Well,
Okay?
that's
But they're only getting like less than an hour a day. My kids, I'd say, I'm sorry, get out of my house. And they go, what do I do? I say, actual reality.
Yeah.
You're going to go outside, find a friend. I don't care. Get in a fight and then resolve it. I don't care. But it's got to be real life, because there is no substitute for activity, for stimulation, for action. These kids aren't getting it, so they're not growing. The social sides of their brain are retarded.
It's heartbreaking, because I have seen I run a Cub Scout troop with my husband. Well, I'm just a helper. But I see some of the kids that you could tell who's active, who's not. It breaks my heart to see some of them.
Yeah, but you're a part of the solution, because the Cub Scout program and the Boy Scout program are getting them out. They're getting them thinking. They're getting them socializing them. They're learning leadership skills. They're doing all these different things. Those kinds of things are the answers. We're too often trying to. I can't tell you how many times comes across my desk this. We've got this new app it's going to solve autism, or we've got this new app that's going to solve this or that piece of behavioral or learning disorders. And I go, wow, you guys are just not creative.
Yeah.
You're so locked into your screens that you don't realize the screens are becoming the problem.
Yeah, there's a world outside.
One dimensionality. Yeah, we're losing our ability. I mean, you put them out in left field and hit a ball, and they're watching the ball, and then even if they do respond, they're responding completely inappropriately, because their entire visual perception of where things are in space, judging where the ball is coming, it's gone, or if they ever had it.
Yeah.
And so because we're getting away from that, and the school systems are getting away from that. What is PE now? We're going to walk around the track. Maybe some will run, some will just sit.
Yeah.
That's PE. And who's the PE teacher?
Yeah.
The one that didn't want to teach health or history or whatever. And he or she is sitting on the bench too. They're not running or walking. I remember my PE teachers, man. They're wrestling coaches.
Yeah, my PE
they're out there running.
Yeah.
We're trying to catch up with them.
Yeah.
Say
exactly.
That is a PE teacher.
Yeah.
Right. And they're out there. Let's do some calisthenics. All right, let's do some. And we're doing. They're getting them excited about. They're playing music and that. And we're moving.
Yeah.
Say, that's where we should be. And we look at it and go, why do we have so many problems? But we don't look back at when we didn't have those problems.
Yeah, like today.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things we could talk about right now.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Don't get pleased that we don't. That's one place we don't need to go today. But I do want to ask you another question. My daughter was asking me to ask you this. How important is it to burp a baby when they're an infant and they're little? Does that if you don't burp them, will something happen later on in life to their guts?
Well, from a basic point of view, I look at it. Do you ever get vapor lock in your car? When the gasoline gets a little bit of air in the fuel system, what happens?
It stalls.
The car stops.
Yeah.
Okay. The digestion system. I just don't understand. My child's digestion system just doesn't work very well. Hey, when there's vapor lock, get the vapor out. The way I see it as a neurologist is all of that movement of the gases become a stimuli within that system that's sending a back loop into the nucleus tractus solitarius within the brainstem, and it's a part of the learning development of digestion. It's a part of the getting connection. Most of a stroke is I can't feel this part of my arm. I can feel this part, and it's really working well. In fact, it's so overworking, it's literally killing the other side up here in my spinal cord. So I have to teach the brain that this exists. Well, a burp, when it comes back up, is sending a sensory system loop all the way up into the brainstem, into the NTS, and it's saying, oh, yeah, that's what, and you know what, that felt a lot better when I did that.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why the kid's crying. Yeah, they're crying because they're extremely uncomfortable. And then we want to get it up, and then it becomes a part of that. I'm learning digestion. I'm learning where everything is and how to operate it. There are only two things that the motor system does: contract muscles, which moves joints, or secrete stuff. Now, they say, well, where does that digestion system fit into that? It's a long tube of muscle.
I was going to say it all connects.
With stuff that secretes into it.
Yeah.
And so we want that system to function in an automated way where we don't have to think about it. That's the cranial nerve 10, and the sensory side is the NTS, the nucleus tractus solitarius. We want it to know where everything is in space, and I'll often do certain maneuvers on the abdominal area to get the nervous system to relink up so that digestion happens in a more refined fashion. And then I'll work with the thing that refines digestion is the frontal lobe through the reticular system causes the cranial nerve 10 to become very, very refined. You should not have any symptoms from digestion. That's the order of health.
Yeah.
If you have reflux, GERD, a sour stomach, IBS, we just blah 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 blah. It's all the frontal lobe is not doing its job. You got one side that's overworking, one side that's underworking. Imagine you take the digestive system and cut it in half. You got a right side and a left side. The right side is run by right cranial nerve 10, but it's refined by the right frontal lobe through the reticular system. Let's imagine that the right frontal lobe is running very low, which is most people, especially men. That it's running very low. They've got a high driving system. So on the left side, the refinement of cranial nerve 10 is working very well. So that side of the musculature is working very well. Over here on the right side, it's not working nearly so well. So now you have a dissonance in what's going on in your digestive system. That doesn't sound good.
No, and we've been hearing more and more about digestion. It's well, the second brain, they call it the first brain, some will call it the second brain, but it's crucial. I know from Dr. Elmer, he's told me that you are teaching children to digest all their life up to their 18. I've been really conscious with my son too, because I notice he's had problems with that as well. So I've been using the PB assist with him every day. It makes a tremendous difference in the way he functions. But you've given me a lot to think about with him. And now my husband too, I'm like, is your front lobe not working right, James? Like, what's up? So it's some
He's a guy.
Yeah.
He's not using it.
Well,
I'm not using mine.
Yeah, and women, they probably have something in common as well, where part of theirs don't fire up.
They're
Are more
usually on the
common.
other side.
On the other side.
Yeah.
So that left-right brain work is key. And digestion, if you don't get a hold of it, especially when they're younger, and correct me if I'm wrong, so that you go through life, it's going to say that's where the Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's comes in, because you've got to have a good digestive system. So if there's something going on, you really do need to take a look at what you're doing and what you're eating, exercising, practice the left brain work. I am a left-handed person, but I've been brushing my teeth with my right hand. And I know Dr. Elmer will be proud of me, because I've been doing a lot of loom knitting. And I was like, Dr. Elmer would be proud, because that is left-right brain work. I'm using both sides of my hands and keeping doing it. So that's one thing I want to make sure for my health for the future. So, with the children out there, if you have issues, you can always pop a question in our feed, or if there's something you want to hear a video what Dr. Elmer and I can do for you to maybe help you navigate through some problems or an issue, please do. Dr. Elmer, why don't you tell everybody, what is an ideal client look like for you?
Ideal client. I'm the bad case guy. I'm really not interested in. I'm not the chiropractor. I'm looking for a chiropractor. I send him down the street to a friend. I got a friend down the street. I keep his cards. When I run out, I call and say, "Could you send me over some more cards?" And that I'm the bad case guy, and you're probably not in that category. That's fine. You know somebody who is. Multiple failed back surgeries, scoliosis above 100-degree Cobb angle, somebody with rods. They got the rods, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, they didn't work like they said, and that. I'm the brain injury guy. That's really one of my very favorite.
Yeah, if you have a traumatic brain injury, car accident, fall. I have a friend of mine whose brother is many years ago on Boulder Highway. He's severely brain damaged. I know Nicholas, as I know, he's watched a few times, but that's one of his favorites, especially the traumatic brain injury for sure.
That's fun.
Yeah, football players, I guess, would be another one, because he likes athletes. Dr. Elmer was an athlete. He likes athletes. So that'd be another good one.
Yeah, but the people that are just really in bad shape, suffering. I often walk over to the board and write suffering on the board. That's really what we're about. If people come in here, my regular patient is usually crying 4 or 5 times in the report of findings when I'm showing them their X-rays, when I'm going over their findings, and that they're usually crying and they're pleading. Isn't there something that can be done? That's my case. I've been to 10 doctors, they've been to 5 chiropractors, and the comment is, if you can't fix me, I'm going to blow my brains out. That's my case.
Yeah.
There are so many that come in that say they want to, and then they waste my time.
I've seen Dr. Elmer perform miracles, the stroke patients. So I do encourage you to come to the Wednesday night classes. That really, to me, is where the magic happens in this room. When I come to the Wednesday night classes, it's amazing what I see, what I hear, the results from people. And it's funny, because on those Wednesday classes, a lot of times Dr. Elmer will pull somebody out, but for some reason, it's always the person that should have been pulled out that day. It's amazing how that happens. So we hope you join us, and please come visit Dr. Elmer for his Wednesday night classes at 3505 East Flamingo Road. He's right by that
Amazing Clowns.
Amazing Clowns. So it's such a fitting place for Dr. Elmer's office. So we hope you come. Will join us for our next video, and please share this with somebody that that maybe has some of these issues that we're speaking of, and we'd love to hear from you. So thank you, and have a great day.
Hey, my girlfriend's online.
Hey, my daughter's online.
Hey.